What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday Thoughts with Mike, your mentor. Hope your week has gotten off to a good start and you had a good Tuesday. Tuesday nights are movie nights in the King family household, family movie night. We try to at least go out or rent a movie. Tonight we were going to go see a movie, but I got the times messed up, so we ended up renting a movie and watch this movie my daughter wanted to see, which is called Ugly Dolls, which is definitely interesting. Some good stuff in that movie. I'm not big on the cartoon movies, but you take one for the team. My wife and my daughter, that seems to be more of their area of entertainment, but no problem. So if you're checking this page out, welcome. Show me some love. A little hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. Talking about a very important subject tonight. Giving my thoughts about fatherhood and setting our sons up for success. And going to share a story of what that looks like for me and just the effects that it's had on my own son and some background on that. So if you're new to this page, welcome. I mean, the basic premise is to take the 38 years of wisdom that I've gained by going through a lot of crazy stuff in my own life with my father not being there, and my own journey to discover what manhood really looks like, and along the way how I burned some bridges, how I hurt some people, and really the damage I caused myself, and how I had to learn to go back and deal with some of those things as God brought them up in order that I can continue to grow as both a man, a father, and a husband. And I firmly believe that as men, we have a higher calling on our lives as husbands, fathers, friends, and leaders in the community. And the world is the way it is primarily because as men, we have either rejected those roles, we've refused that responsibility, or we just don't know how to deal with that in what it looks like. And after discovering these things for myself and still working through a lot of these things, I tend to be more towards the introverted side, deep thinker, like my peace and quiet, but this was put on my heart a long time ago, and I was running from it. I didn't want to do it because it's easy to just keep to yourself and worry about yourself. But I had some experiences that really just broke my heart, and I couldn't keep quiet anymore. So I'm coming on here and I'm sharing what I know and what I've learned, and the response has been amazing. Talking to people, men all over the world, about real issues and real things, and don't get a lot of super activity on this page, which is fine, but behind the scenes in Messenger and in other ways, the stuff that guys share with me is extremely encouraging, I guess, as what I would say. And that's what it's all about, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just glad people are paying attention and people are getting good stuff out of this. So we're going to jump into Tuesday Thoughts. It's just where I share some thoughts on something that God's put on my mind to talk about. And if there's any questions, just let me know. And then we'll, as we dialogue, and we'll start it up. Let me just turn this on here so I can see, just in case something comes across. Okay. So how did we get here where we are in society? I'm not sure of the exact number without looking it up, and I didn't look it up before, but let's just call it where more people are divorced than they are married, or at least seems like that. And the stats definitely show that there are more single parent households than there are whole family households, at least in America, if not across the world. You know, how did we get here in America where that is predominantly the reality for a lot of people? Well, if we look back in history, we can see that America started as an agricultural society, right? And as a family, you had a piece of land, and that was your means of survival. You worked the land, or you worked the land of somebody else. But it was a different time, a different period, and the benefits to that period were fathers and sons got to work alongside themselves, alongside each other all day long. So sons got to see how firsthand dad's work ethic. They got to see how dad dealt with certain social issues that came up, certain issues in business and taking care of the farm, or dealing with the person that he worked for. He got to see how he handled life every day with mom, and what that dynamic looked like, and the other kids as well. And then we had this transition in society where we moved from an agricultural society to an industrial based society with the Industrial Revolution. And men were taken out of their houses and sent or went to factories for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And then they came home and their family got what was left over uh, with them, right? And then we had another revolution, which was the World Wars, which then took men who were gone 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day from their home, completely out of their home for months, if not years, at a time, as we went to war. And then more often than not, these men would come back, and that generation grew up with fathers in their house physically, but fathers were gone emotionally, and mentally a lot of times. And then that next generation grew up, and as a result of men coming back from the war and not being the same, women had to do what they normally do, and that's step up, man, and shoulder the burden and say, okay, I'm going to make this happen. Like, I'm going to take care of my family. And they went to work, right, to provide for the family, to take care, to care, to, help carry the burden. And this desire to do what is right, what is noble, morphed into some radical movements, let's just say. And what women needed, right, from men that they weren't getting, and rightfully so, they needed, they fought for and they went to get. But some of that morphed into going about it the wrong way. So then we have a whole another generation of kids who experienced that and learned from that. And then we have a lot of the generation that we have now, where you're growing up in single parent homes and you're not leaving your home till you're, well into your 30s, and we have no idea what manhood looks like. We have no idea what it looks like to have a good relationship between a father and son, because a lot of those relationships are broken as a result of this let's just call it like a downward spiral in society. Not saying that, I don't know if we could have prevented that from happening with the changes that were going on in society, but these are the negative consequences of some of those decisions and the repercussions of some of those things, and we've never quite figured out how to appropriately deal with them. So we went from a time where dad would show a young man or his son what it took to be a man, and model that firsthand, to where at least half of the men in America don't get to see that and don't get to experience that firsthand, and they're left to pretty much wander in the dark and try to discover it for themselves, and burning down everything in their way as they try to discover what that looks like. And I know this firsthand from my own experience, and I know this secondhand from watching some men in my life do that, and having the privilege of coming alongside some men who are trying to pick up the pieces, the brokenness that they've experienced, in trying to really deal with that. So here I am. I find myself married, and my wife has a son. So clearly he's not mine by blood, but that was not a problem for me. I love kids, and we got married, and now I've got this 7-year-old son who's living with me, and I've got a decision to make. And I'm probably more conscious of it than maybe most people, just because growing up myself without a father, and realizing the importance of that and how much that is needed. I'm thinking about what can I do to help my son understand manhood and what I think that looks like, and the values associated with that. Honor, character, respect, integrity, those type of things. And how can I not only model that for him, but how can I help prepare him for when he's older, so that he has a foundation that he can rely on, that he can look back and use, especially when we get placed in those situations in life where we might want to compromise, right? Where we might want to take the easy way out. So I made sure that I did one important thing, and I'll get to that in a second. But my first experience with kind of help guiding him into this whole idea of manhood was when he moved in with us. I noticed that when we would go out to eat, this dude loved Subway, right? I mean, he was 7 years old eating foot-long ham and cheese sandwiches like they were Twinkies. I mean, he just devoured them. And but when we would go out, I noticed right away that he would just stand there, and he would look at me or look at his mom and wait for me or his mom to basically do it for him, to order for him. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing at all, but I identified it as, this is an opportunity to help him have ownership of who he is and his voice in the world, and that he can make decisions for himself, and that he can assert himself, right? So one time we were there, and he was kind of looking, waiting for us to order, and I just bent down and I just told him, I said, "Hey man, just tell her what you want. Speak up, use your voice." And he kind of looked at me like he wasn't sure if that was okay or not. So with a little bit more encouragement, he kind of spoke up real soft like, and the lady was like, "Excuse me," and then he had to speak up louder. But to see his growth just from that one little thing, is as small as it may seem, or as insignificant as it may seem, was a huge turning point in his life, and him being able to own his, who he was, even at 7 years old, right? So the big breakthrough and the encouragement that I would give to you guys, I'm just going to show you something here a second. So here's a picture of me and Anthony right soon after me and his mom got married. Who knows what I said to him there. I'm a funny guy, in case he didn't know. Got him cracked up. So how did I get him from here to here? Here's him today, right? He's 18, senior in high school. Kid's just amazing, right? Has such a love and a heart for people in his community, and wanting to do what's right, and like most teenagers, trying to figure out what's next in his life. Where's God leading him? But he's awesome. And so how do I get him from 7 years old and dependent on his mom and dad to being 18 years old and stepping out in independence and owning more of his independence each and every day, and just preparing him for when he does choose to leave our house, or I kick him out because he gets too old. We'll see. I'm pretty sure he'll leave before that. But yeah, so I think the pivotal point in this whole thing was age 13. In American society, there is no rite of passage for men. Most cultures have them, right? But American culture does not. So if you ask, let's say 5 different guys when they knew they became a man, you'll get, I have no idea, which I've heard before. Or they'll say things like, when I smoked my first cigarette, when I slept with a woman for the first time, when I could pay my bills on my own, when I left my house. All these various things. No one defining moment that's common among all men where they say, yeah, this is when I became a man. This is when it happened. And I didn't want that to be the case for my son. Now, I didn't know any of this before, right? Like, these are things I've learned along my journey, and the reason why I'm sharing them with you. So on Friday nights, if you're new, we go through this workbook called The Quest for Authentic Manhood, and it's life-changing. I can't even describe it. And I'd invite you to join us at 9:30, somewhere in between there, on Friday nights with going through this book. But the author of that, Robert Lewis, he wrote another book, and it's called Raising a Modern Day Knight, a Father's Role in Guiding His Son to Authentic Manhood. And he talks about this book in this workbook, right? And this is where I first heard this idea of having a age-appropriate ceremony for your son that welcomes him into the next phase of his life, so that there will be no mistake of where he's at in his life, how he should be acting, and what responsibilities he has. Now, Robert Lewis lays out 3 distinct times in a boy's life where this ceremony should take place. So typically around puberty. So for most boys, it's like age 13. Then when they turn 18 or somewhere around there, maybe coincide with graduating from high school. And then the third one is when they're going to get married and take on the responsibility of caring for someone else. And he lays out ideas, as well as talks about what he did for his sons at each one of those phases. And that struck me way back when we were living in Chicago, and I was going through this content for the first time, and I was like, that's it. Like, that's part of how I don't know if I necessarily made the connection, but hindsight, like, that's how you fix the problem, right? Because unless you're taught and shown what it looks like, good luck. A lot of trial and error there. I'm the process of that, right? And if I would have had some of this or experienced some of this growing up, the pain and the hurt that I could have saved myself and saved others, extremely important. So we had the first phase for my son when he was 13. So I'll just share that with you here and what that looked like, and then talk about kind of what I got planned coming up, and then we'll get out of here. So, age 13. So, what I did is I got my buddy Monty together because his son was the same age, and thought it would be good to do this together for his son and my son, and said, hey man, I got this idea. Here's what it looks like. What do you think? Are you down? And he's like, yeah, of course. And so what we did is we took the boys up north. My grandpa has a cottage on the national forest, and we went up there. I invited some men that I respected in my own life, and I told them ahead of time, a couple weeks in advance, to think about what you would want to know if you were 13 again, and entering this next phase in your life. And two, what does manhood mean to you, and what does that look like? So invited those guys up. The ones that wanted to joined us on Friday night. We played some paintball and then spent the night. And then on Saturday, the other ones came up, and what we did is we had a meal, right? So kind of a little, I guess, a fancy meal, or something that costs a little bit of money. Got some good steaks and grilled them on the open fire, and had a real good a good meal. And then we all gathered around the fire, and I asked each man to share what they had come up with, right? And then when that was done, my buddy Monty went, and he shared, and then I went and I shared, and then when we were all done, we came around the two boys, and we laid hands on them, and we just prayed that God would bless them and watch over them as they enter this next journey in life, and that He would surround them with good friends who would speak truth to them, and that they could do life together, and just things like that, right? And then I can't tell you like how powerful of an experience that was. One, in the moment, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I mean, the emotion was thick, like you could cut it with a knife. And then two, my son still talks about that to this day, and he'll always remember that, right? Because that was something special and significant in his life, and a defining moment in his life. And then to cap it all off, what I did and what you should do is, if you're thinking of doing this for yourself, right? So you have the dinner, you have the ceremony, and then you want to give them an age-appropriate gift that we will always remind them, I guess, or signify that day. So I got two swords, one for my son, one for Monty's son. So I got my son on like a knight's kind of sword. I don't know what the technical term would be for it. And I got the other boy a samurai sword. And then God just laid some words on my heart for each boy, and how the sword represented the spirit He had given each one of them, and then just kind of gave them a charge to embrace that and to walk that out as they grew in life, and it was really cool. So my son has his in his room, and Monty's son has his in his room somewhere. So yeah, that kind of set it off. So now that my son is 18, he's entering the next phase, and I've been thinking about, what do I want my son to remember from this time in his life, and two, what do I want him to know and think about moving forward. So I'm kind of in the midst of planning this again with my buddy, and the way that it's shaken out is, it's probably going to be another ceremony, whether it coincides with his graduation or it's something before or after that. It'll have the same format, right? So there will be some sort of special meal. There will be some sort of ceremony with like a blessing and words of wisdom, and then there will be a gift. I haven't decided on what that will be. I think Robert Morris, when he shared, not Robert Morris, Robert Lewis, when he shared at the second phase, he gave his sons, I want to say, a family ring with like the family crest on it, and he talked about this crest and what it means, and what each one of those things symbolizes. And I think that's pretty much what I'm gonna do. But how that translates into a gift, whether it'll be a ring or not, I don't know. And then my goal is, right, when one day when he decides he's gonna get married and he's gonna be responsible for someone else other than himself, to have the same type of thing. Whether it's at the wedding rehearsal dinner or sometime before that, just having a ceremony with friends and family, and talking about his life and the things that he's learned in each phase, and what he has to look forward to next. Maybe point out some potential traps, some potential pitfalls. Pray over them, and then give them something to signify the moment, and then that will be it. So if you really want to have an impact on your son, and you really want to make a difference in his life, and I'm saying this, not saying that you're not, if you're watching this, but if you want to do something life-changing for your son, I can't recommend anything better than doing this. It's totally worth it. Totally worth the time it took to plan. Totally worth the investment. Totally worth everything. Not only will it bring you closer to your son, but it will also just help with communication down the road. I would be willing to bet that if I hadn't done that for my son, that when he started to experience some tough times in his life as a teenager, that we wouldn't be able to have the open dialogue that we have always shared. I shouldn't say always shared, that we have now and we've shared in the past, without that. Because there's something there. I don't know if I would bet that there's something spiritual there, right? But because of all that, right? Like, it's like there's this lesson in copywriting that goes show, don't tell. So it's one thing to say to my son, I love you, I'm proud of you, you're good at X, Y, and Z. It's another thing to show him by setting up this elaborate ceremony, and doing this thing for him, right? And I guess no one knows that better than me, because my dad used to say stuff all the time and never follow through. And what people say mean a whole lot to, or what people do means a whole lot more to me than what people say. Yeah, so I just want to encourage you on that. Hope you find that helpful. If you have daughters, you can definitely do the same thing for your daughter. It doesn't have to be just for sons, but I think it's important as fathers, if we want to start to change things, and you want to change your family tree like I'm changing my family tree, that you give this some serious thought and consideration. If you don't know what to do, or you're looking for ideas, hit me up. I love this stuff. More than happy to help you plan something, or get some ideas, or give you some ideas. Once again, this book is an awesome resource. raising a modern day knight. He shares everything he did with his sons there. Why reinvent the wheel? So if you need anything, hit me up. Other than that, love you guys. See you guys tomorrow for Wednesday Wisdom. Good night.